This is joining me here, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Why is the UK British Army sinking? Due to money and due to cuts. This is going to be a bad thing. But if any other country tries to invade the UK, they're going to see it's a weakness, especially like people like terrorists or people who want to blow up the UK. They did it in London a long time ago. People want to go around in suicide vests, fake vests, and blow up the UK. And it's not right, I know, but if the army is sinking in the UK, what else will sink next? Will the NHS go even more downhill? Will the police force go even more downhill? Will other people like start striking, like people in jobs, people in schools, people at housing places? This is not good. We need our British Army to be big and strong to fight off the enemy. If it's low, then they're going to find a weakness. Some people agree, some people are saying yes or no. But we'll see what's going to be said on air and see what these people say about it.
So, just what state are the UK's armed forces in? Let's get an idea now. With me, retired Air Vice Marshal Sean Bell. Sean, good to see you. Let's get into this, shall we? The UK not committing to spending more money on the British Army. And we heard there from Deborah Haynes, other European countries are investing more.
I think the story, we'll get the facts behind it, because defence spending you can measure in a number of different ways.
See what the other countries that have got more army personnel in compared to the UK with the blue.
How much are you prepared to commit? NATO has set a 2% target.
So basically,
nations within NATO
I'm going to go through this quickly and we can see. So basically, what we're going to show you is, I know my phone's on low battery, you got Germany, good army, Portugal, good army in blue, Italy, Bulgaria, Turkey, Hungary, Slovakia, Republic, Norway, Romania, France, Latvia, a country called Estonia, one underneath there's got Poland, UK, US, Greece, and Germany. They've all got good army things you can see there. But the UK is falling. And not any country that allow their army forces to fall. Why is the UK doing it? Are we running out of money from helping Ukraine, or what are we going to do? Will Russia start finding the weakness and try to attack us? Hope not, but let's see.
Few of them actually make it. From this graphic here, you can see that UK is up at 2.3%, but the vast majority of countries are not. What's happened
about Northern Ireland,
is
Scotland, Wales,
which is right on the doorstep of many of our European colleagues, has suddenly shaken them all up, and they're now dramatically trying to increase spending. Germany, for example, was 1.4%. It's got a big gap to make up. Now, as a military guy, of course, I would always welcome more national money for our defences, but I have to say that the UK on this metric is paying its way. And if you look at all of this area below the graph of 2%, that is the area of spending which could make a really significant difference to NATO's capability. The other challenge is how we spend our money. We're clearly meeting the requirements of NATO. Are there smarter ways we can spend our money? Almost certainly, and that will be the use of simulation, network simulation, not just nationally but internationally, because we're going to be placing even greater reliance on alliances into the future.
So when the PM says that the UK has one of the largest defence budgets, it's because of that GDP figure that's measured by it, and the other countries are spending more to catch up. Let's talk about the British Army, because that has come into sharp focus today. And the UK, it seems, allowing the British Army to shrink in the past few decades. Why, and what effect could that have going forward?
Defence, as we've heard from politicians of all parties...
If the British Army sinks, World War III could happen.
The challenge is how you spend your money, and there's no doubt the
Well,
British
it could
Army
be okay.
senior training has been reduced in size. We're heading down to 73,000, I think it is, about half the size it was 30 years ago. But of course, the military is always configured, A, by the threat, but also by resources. But interestingly also how we fight. And the danger is everybody's using the Ukraine war as an example of how we need to reconfigure. Russians, the way they're fighting this is almost 20th century. It's almost Neanderthal, because they're hundreds of thousands of soldiers on the ground, unguided weapons, an attritional type of warfare, almost seeming not to care about how many casualties they have. Whereas Ukraine, by contrast, which is what the West does, we tend to use technology, precision strike weapons, because we try to minimize the number of casualties we have. Now, when it comes to the size of the army, my army colleagues would say it's only the army that can take and hold ground. Absolutely right. But the nuance here is how much we rely on technology versus very, very large armies. Defense is all about choices. It's about configured to the threat, but within the resource envelope that's available.
Yeah, army personnel, just one resource. Other resources, we know that the UK has committed a lot to Ukraine, whether it's, tanks or other artillery equipment. Has that left big black holes in the UK's own defence capability when it comes to those kind of resources?
The short answer is you don't keep stuff on the shelf that you don't need. So by giving some of it away, you take increased risk. The challenge is, do you need to address that risk quickly or not? And there's been a recent report that says in the media that the government was criticised it took almost a year to start replacing some of the equipment that's been given away. But let's use NLAWs as an example. An anti-tank weapon, over 10,000 of these have been given to Ukraine. So we need to replace them. Now, do you replace them like for like? Just, you can't go to the shops and buy them. You have to configure industry to spin up. Or do you look and say, this thing was entered service in 2009, it was being developed 20 years ago, technology's moved on quite a pace. Could you get an upgraded model? Could you get better capability, and could it be cheaper? So undoubtedly, getting value for money for the taxpayer, MOD will have gone out and tried to find out whether there are alternatives and how best to secure those. But let's be clear, it's also not just about equipment for Ukraine, it's training as well. Literally overnight, the first batch of Ukrainian tank operators landed in the UK to try and learn how to operate the Challenger 2. There'll be both operators and maintainers. They'll be using these sorts of facilities. It's not what you'd expect a simulator to look like. There's loads and loads of tank simulators in there. There'll be lots of operators. They'll be in realistic conditions. They'll be put under a huge amount of pressure. But this is some of the best training in the world that will be provided to our Ukrainian soldiers.
So we've got the firefighters thing there. I don't know what this is about. We're going to put that on there too. So let's have a look at. My phone is going to be on low battery as well, of course, which it is. After this advert, obviously. So I need to charge my phone up. I'm just putting some points across in these videos to make them longer, which is a good thing.
With Money's Supermarket.
The newly qualified firefighter Jade Bove going on strike as a last resort. But when wages for some are less than £12 an hour, it's also essential.
People are struggling and people having to go and work after they finish this work. We're constantly putting our life at risk for the job that we do. Like, we've just sadly lost one of our own again. So every time we're going to work, there could be a chance that we're not going back home to our families. And with the job we do as well, it's a high risk of getting cancer. I just don't feel like we're paid enough at all for what we do.
Manchester Central is at fire stations across the country. They say they've seen a decade of falling real terms wages.
At our last end now, really. We cannot see firefighters in food banks, which we are doing. I have friends who are visiting food banks, friends who are struggling to pay bills. This isn't jumping on the bandwagon. This is ultimately, it's here and now.
FBU members have voted by 88% for a strike.
The union streamed a result that could mean its first nationwide strike for 20 years. And in the week when we will see thousands of teachers in England and Wales join their Scottish counterparts on the picket line, the winter of industrial discontent just grows.
I think what's clear is that strikes are not a last resort. We have been continuing conversations. We have been trying to see where we can find areas of compromise. But clearly, it is not we can't do something that is going to really get in the way of our objective, which is to halve inflation.
But unions rallied their supporters in London, knowing exclusive polling commissioned by Sky News shows public support for them growing. It will be weeks before firefighters actually strike, but with more action by nurses and ambulance workers next week, we are increasingly facing the question of what happens when those frontline emergency services just aren't there. Greg Mylan, Sky News.
Yeah, there's a fair point for that sort of thing. And then like a helicopter in the sky. Anyway, I better end the video. Thank you for all joining me. It's the next one. Peace.
What state are the UK's armed forces in? Let's